Hello everyone and welcome back to the next video in the 7 Days to Die series I'm working on. This video I'm going to show you how to build a starter base. I'm at a location where I'm just going to start to build. I have all my resources I need, which I got in the previous video. The idea behind this base is that it's easy to build. You can pretty much build it as soon as you start playing the game because it's mostly made out of wood. It's modular, so we start off small with this one. Which is good enough to survive the first day 7 wave, and then later we can reinforce it. But this one's just the starter base. I've taken the liberty of drawing up a little plan here that might help you to understand the footprint of the base. Now this is the first, like I said, this is actually going to expand, but this is the first stage of it. And I've written up here wood can be used or brick, because later on we're going to the next space across from it I'm going to start using brick, but we'll get to that later. The spikes here are represented as circles because it's a bird's eye view, and under that there's going to be some adobe kind of piping which makes it repairable from below, and then there's this iron grid which is actually going to be up a few stories so that the spider zombies can't climb up the walls of your base. But you'll understand that 2D plan a little better whenever I'm actually building it. And if you want to download this, even save it as a JPEG, or it's in PDF format right now because it makes it so that you can zoom way in on it. And I'll leave that available on Golden Age Gaming, and I'll put a link in the description as to where you can get that. But for now, what I'm going to do is clear the area of this scrub, because it just makes it a lot easier to see what you're doing really, and clears the area a little bit. Once we have a nice clean patch of land, I just start digging the first trench. So the perimeter of the where the first spikes go down is 15 by 15. It's a 15 by 15 grid. The internal space I think is 7 by 7, which is what you'll actually be once the walls go up. What you're left with really. The first 3 sort of lines are spikes, 2 of which are repairable. So once you have that 15 by 15 grid, just one layer dug out, tidy up the rest of this scrub, and what you're left with is something that looks like this. A nice clean area to work from. So it's getting pretty late, so I end up spending the rest of the night in my other little pre-made house. But I come back down first thing in the morning, and the next thing I do is dig down 3 layers. So 3 blocks worth is what we want to dig the whole way. And if you can, then just go ahead and dig this whole area out 3 blocks. I don't know, it's like I never have the patience to do it. And at this point I didn't have the tools the tools I was using were really slow. So what I end up doing is doing it in stages, but my next base I probably will do just dig the whole thing out at once, because it'll be much quicker in terms of making the video more than anything. But anyway, for now I just dig out 3 blocks down and put wooden crates. I don't even repair them at this stage, I just drop them down, and I'm left with something that looks like this. So next I dig 2 spaces in from the perimeter wall, and I get my Adobe 50 blocks. Now this looks a little bit funny because they look like they're just hovering there, and they're not visually connected to each other. It doesn't look like they're actually touching, and they're not touching, but as far as the game's concerned they are, because they're beside each other in a block. So if I was to actually dig out all this dirt from below them, which I will pretty soon, they will just hover there, even though there's nothing connecting them to anything. It's just how the gravity works in this game. And it's pretty good because it allows me to dig out all the dirt and lay down some spikes and repair it from underneath, but we'll get to that later. Once you have 2 rows of pipes laid down, go ahead and reinforce the top layer of the wooden blocks, and you should be left with something that looks like this. At this point you should really think about just digging out the entire middle part here, because we're wanting to go 3 blocks down for this whole part. This is like the underground part to it. It's getting late for me though, and I don't want to spend another night in my pre-made building, so I take a bit of a risk here, and I'm just like, I'm trying to build this as quick as I can. Realistically I shouldn't have done this, but if you can afford not to, then don't. But this is like an emergency. If you're like in a rush and night time's coming on, this is what I did anyway. Get my spikes ready and just start laying these things all around me. I'm essentially trapping myself in my own base, but I don't intend to leave this base tonight. I intend to just stay in here all night working on my base rather than spending another night in the pre-made place. So right away I don't have enough spikes to cover the whole area, so I just start building the walls with the remaining wood I have. This should be a 9x9 grid, so go ahead and put that up for the first layers in wood and reinforce that as best you can. In fact, just fully reinforce that. I didn't do it here because I didn't have the wood to do it. What goes down next is iron bars. Now in my playthrough I didn't actually have these iron bars yet. I was only using wood at this point, and you can get away with it to a certain point, but only to a certain point, and I'll show you why pretty soon. But what I did was I went ahead and just built the top row without having the iron bars in, because I knew an exploit in the game where if you build 4 blocks and in a row without any sort of anything below them, just kind of hovering in mid-air, the 5th block you place, the whole structure will collapse, but not if you start building from the other side. So technically its weight's being held up by 2 sides of the wall, which is fine as long as no zombies kind of destroy one section of it and the whole thing will come tumbling down. But my idea was that I'd have other parts of it reinforced by them. Again, I was trying to rush this because I wanted to get into the base as quickly as I could and just spend the whole night in here building, but it kind of backfired on me later on because I didn't have the iron bars in for the windows, and because I didn't reinforce all of the wood, like you should just reinforce everything like doubly strong, my entire structure fell down, and it was partly to do with how I was building the roof as well. I shouldn't have went around it the way I did. So it was a bit of a disaster for me, so learn from my mistakes, put those iron bars in right away. My building couldn't have collapsed at a worse time because I got like a mini horde that night and I had to fight them off, and luckily they came to the part of the building that didn't collapse, and there were spikes out there which I laid down, and the spikes just took some of them out, and I managed to survive that actually and kind of build the walls back up the way they were, and even though I didn't have the iron bars in, still they were built until I got the iron bars. So the next thing I do when I've got the walls and the basic structure up is I need a way to get in and out of this place. So I'm going to set up a ladder in the middle of my base, and to do this you just dig 15 spaces down, or however many you want. I think 15 is a pretty good benchmark, and just place wooden crates to get out of the hole you've just dug. Then dig another hole 15 spaces down beside this, and also use wooden crates to get out. On this second hole you should reinforce the crates as you come out again, and this will be the wall that we're going to hang our ladders off. At this point your game could start looking different from mine, in that once you start going underground it starts to get darker and to the point where you can't see anything. So I should point out that I'm actually wearing the miner's helmet, and I don't think I've mentioned it so far, but if you can find a miner's helmet, it's the most useful thing you can get in this game for mining. It has a torch on the top of the helmet and you can turn it on and off just like you would a flashlight, except the benefit is that your hands are free with this torch and you can just keep on working away, and there doesn't seem to be any batteries or anything with this torch, it just seems to always light up. This is easily the best part of apparel you can get in the entire game, and if you ever come across it, make sure you pick that up because it makes mining so much easier. You don't have to worry about torches or anything like that. I was just really lucky to actually find it in this playthrough, and I'm so glad I actually have it. So now that we have a ladder down, we have to actually tunnel out of our base from underground. So this is where the mining helmet really comes in useful actually. I mine out quite a good bit, probably about 15 blocks outside the base, around that anyway, it's pretty rough, and then start tunneling upwards, again using wooden blocks to just jump on while I tunnel upwards. Eventually you will break through to the surface, and this is where we just do the exact same thing we did in our base. The difference is with the entrance to the base you will definitely need to add a trap door up here and probably even reinforce it. It doesn't really matter about reinforcing it because the zombies don't tend to attack downwards, but they will fall down, and you don't want any zombies falling down into your base really. So I can't put it off any longer. I now need to start tunneling out the lower half of my base, and we don't want any structural collapses like last time, so what I'm doing is as I'm going ahead and hollowing this bottom part out, I'm making sure to put down some Adobe 50 as walls down here for the lower half of my base, just to keep the structure and the walls up top because I don't want another collapse. This also gives me a chance to start digging out under the Adobe 50 pipes that we placed earlier. And you can see now that I'm actually able to loot zombies from down here. This is the mini horde I got whenever my structure collapsed. And what this allows me to do is not only loot the zombies that are up top, but start repairing and actually laying some new spikes up top. Once I've hollowed out the bottom half of my base, it should look something like this. I used the 3 blocks down wall as a guide on how far down to make this place. I like to use Adobe 50 down here just because it's slightly stronger than wood, and also it lets me see through, and just in the off chance that anyone might burrow under my base, or somehow someone might fall down. It's very unlikely for any zombies to actually fall through these. It's never happened to me before, but I just like to be able to see what's on the other side of that wall. The last thing to do down here is I place a door. Again, I just, on the off chance someone gets down and I want to run away, and just close the door, and just, that'll buy me some time to climb up my ladder, or down if the case may be. Next, it's time to actually build a floor. I don't even have a floor in my base at this point. It's actually pretty unlikely for this floor to collapse because the Adobe is quite strong, and you've already kind of got this middle column and stuff where your ladder's coming off, so if you just start building from there, you should be good to go. So go ahead and place that floor the whole way around and just reinforce it as best you can. The more reinforced this floor is, the stronger your structure will be. So things are starting to look good. I've got my floor in and I've survived the first night. It's now morning time and I spent all night building. And now that it's daytime, it should be safe for me to go outside and start doing some more reinforcements to this base. So this gives me a chance to go out and repair some of the spikes and place some new ones on the third layer around my base. Defense is really important if you want to survive long, so I'd recommend you lay 3 rows of spikes and reinforce them as best you can. At this stage I'm only reinforcing it with wood, but later on in the game I make sure these are all steel. Okay, so just to show you what this looks like now that I'm fully set up defensively. On the innermost spikes, you'll not be able to lay them from the outside, and that was always something that bugged me about this game. You can't really repair the innermost spikes or else you'll get hurt, so that's why this repair system is perfect. I mean, it's what most people use, and honestly I don't really know what I would do without it, because you can't get in. If you're laying like 3 rows of spikes, it's hard to get in at the closest row to the base. But with this kind of underground thing, you can actually lay spikes and repair them from down here. So I certainly haven't found a better method defensively, so this is what I'm sticking to. So once you have those spikes all laid and reinforced with wood, this is what you should be left with. So this is where I start to add the iron bars as windows. This not only allows you to see out and shoot out, but it adds a lot of integrity to your structure. You might want to add yours a lot sooner than I did. I kind of left it a little bit late. I think I was waiting for mine to smelt or something. I just didn't have them available to me at the time. So I just went ahead with the wooden parts of it, and I kind of regret that. So in future I'll probably put these in right away. These iron bars are also great for to prevent the spider zombies from getting into your base. If you leave them overhanging on about 4 blocks up, I usually leave them. The spider zombies, when they try to climb up your walls, they'll just hit their heads off the grid, and you can then just shoot down at them, or they'll just probably get killed by the spikes actually. So in order to make these overhanging iron bars, what I do is start at all 4 corners. That way it's just much easier to link them together. If you just put them on either side of the corner and then just fill in the space. Once you have those corner parts planted, it's very easy to just make a row of these. You don't need to have more than 1 row. I like to add more than 1 row just in case you ever fall off. I like to eventually add 2 rows. I think for the start here I'll just probably didn't have the resources for 2 rows. But 1 row is more than enough to stop the spider zombies from climbing your building. The last thing I'm going to do in this video is add a roof to my building and reinforce it. At this stage I'm just leaving this roof area as a blank canvas. I've got an idea of how I want to connect my buildings together once I start building more bases, but I'm not exactly sure how this is going to work just yet until I start putting up some of the other buildings. So in terms of the structure, I'm going to leave it there for now, but this base is more than enough to survive the first 7-day wave. and that's all really I intended to do with this one. My plan was to get this base up quite quickly and use the rest of the days to scavenge. So now that my building's finished, I have a little loot crate right here just to dump anything that I'm not using. And then I finally get to put my bedroll down in my base. I don't intend to die in this playthrough, so I'll not really be using my bed too much, I hope. But there's just something really symbolic about placing your bed in your base and kind of claiming this area as your new home, really. So one final tour of the downstairs. I don't actually repair these blocks down here because they should never really come under any strain. Aesthetically you could do it, and I probably will do it in my next base just for aesthetic reasons, but the chances are it'll never be tested. I plan on excavating quite a large mine down below my bases, and I've already started work on the next modular building. I will be posting regular updates on this base, and hopefully they'll be up very soon. The next module will be built entirely out of brick and sandstone, so it'll be a much stronger structure. Admittedly, this video was a little rushed and it might have been hard to follow if you were trying to build along with me. My next video should address that. I will have a lot more time to carve out the area and show you exactly step by step how to build, and it'll be a stronger base as well. But now that I have my base set up, the next video will actually be a scavenging. From this point on until day 7, until I get that day 7 horde, I will spend the remainder of my time just scavenging for useful items basically, and I'll show you some nice areas to scavenge and what kind of stuff I look out for. And I will show a video of this very base being attacked by a day 7 horde. It's going to come up after my scavenging video. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you'll join me on the next part of my 7 Days to Die playthrough.